Welcome to Resolve IBS and IBD Naturally. I'm Courtney Cowie, a nutrition therapy and functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. If you are struggling with the symptoms of IBS or IBD and want to get to the root cause of your symptoms so you can take back your health through a whole person approach, this podcast is for you. Just a disclaimer that the information I'm presenting in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice. You should always consult a qualified practitioner before making any changes to your health or medical regimen. That being said, let's get on with the show. All right, Elizabeth Bruckner, so happy to have you on the podcast today. So you're author of the Homesteader Mindset, and I want you to kind of talk a little bit about homesteading, what that means and how that really connects to overall health and then specifically mental health and maybe even gut health. Let's just start by having you tell us a little bit about your story.
Let's dive in. Thank you
Yeah.
for having me on, Courtney. It's great to be here. I am Elizabeth Bruckner. I'm an author of The Homesteader Mindset, an acupuncturist, and a fermentation maven, which we will get into later. And my journey to homesteading, and I do agree we should talk a little bit about what homesteading is,
Yeah.
because as you can tell, I don't look like Ma and Pa Kettle. Like I don't have a Westminster. I don't even know what they're called, Westchester or whatever, whatever the cartoon used to say. Get my Westchester, Sam. I don't.
Right.
That's not what it's about. I don't have homemade clothes, and so it started with I accidentally became a homesteader in
Okay.
an urban area in the suburbia, and then I love teaching what I learn, and so I wrote a book about it.
Okay, okay. Well, maybe we start by just defining what it is because I'm not even sure if I truly know what it is. And I think there's probably a lot of ideas. In fact, funny little story. I was talking with a friend the other day. We have a mutual friend who's way into like the Western kind of cowboy country. And I'm like, maybe that could be homesteading in some version, right? Where you're like branding cows and like logging and like, so maybe just to clear up the myth about what it is, it'd be good for you to kind of define that.
Wonderful. So the the modern homesteading movement is just a way to create sustainable living through an intentional way of life. And so a
Okay.
lot of people are doing homesteading without even knowing they are. For example, you had an episode on plastics and how it's disrupting hormones, and
Yeah.
you or the guest had mentioned like, well, just use mason jars for, storing your food instead of good old plastic ones that we used to have parties
Yes.
about in the 80s, right? And everyone would
Yeah.
buy the plastic thing. And in this case, you're just using Pyrex, and that is a form of homesteading. The homesteading wheel has many spokes. So some
Ah,
of them are eating nutrient dense foods. Others
mhm.
are cooking traditionally, cooking from scratch, which to me was an absolute mind blower. I thought that that was the least important thing that I could do for my body. And even as a healthcare practitioner, I kind of pushed it aside until I got too sick. And we'll talk about that more too.
Yeah.
The old version of homesteading, what most people think of, mom pot kettle with the leather pants or the prairie dress, which some homesteaders now go for a prairie dress, and I'm all for it. But
Yeah.
the old version was the government. And in 1862, they started creating homesteading acts where the federal government gave away or granted 270 million acres to private owners. And so
Okay.
when we think of homesteading, we think of those little house on the prairie folk that went, got their 40 acres and a mule, and moved forward. Sadly, the majority of that 270 million acres went to large corporations and really rich people, but there were a few mom and pop kettles that
Okay.
got to do it. What we're doing now is it's kind of recreating the traditional skills that worked for us back then and
Yeah.
putting them in the modern world. Now, some people are fully off grid and doing great. I think there's a woman named Ballerina Farm or something, and she's this ballerina that stopped and started just completely working the land. I live in the suburban area, so there will be no room for a cow in my backyard around my
Right.
pool. But
Right.
I do find places that I can get raw milk. I've actually milked a cow an hour away from here, which is crazy, but and I'm in very, very suburban area, lots of cement, lots of telephone poles. And
Yeah.
so I just found a way that I could create it wherever I live. So
Yeah.
you can do this in the city, you can do this in suburbs like me, you can do it in a rural area, of course. And
Yeah.
it's just ways to create resilience through intentional lifestyles. And that's all about gut health, right? I mean, Courtney, I'm excited to be here because this is a podcast that's solely about poop, which makes me so happy because acupuncturist. That's all we talk about, and people don't realize how important poop is.
Oh,
So,
for
and
sure.
and how it just like healthy digestion has many spokes to the wheel, so does
Yeah,
homesteading. So it can be creating nutrient-dense food, closing loops. So you garden, you compost, and the food that you eat becomes part of your garden again, and you're creating good soil health. Like there's so many ways you can do it. And the book gives you ideas of how you can do that, like ways you can kind of just incorporate it into your lives. For me, it started with fermentation. I fell in love with these little microbes that were going to help my gut. And then
yeah.
I was like, well, maybe I could grow the food that I now am fermenting. And the 2020 pandemic really helped me because I before that I didn't realize how fragile the food system was.
Oh,
I
yeah.
really didn't. I'm a product of a very privileged American upbringing, but I was raised by a war refugee. Like my mom came from Belarus during World War II, and she knows what it's like to starve. And so I'm only one generation away from true homesteading. My grandmother
Yeah.
had a cow and fed raw milk to my brother, and he's the healthiest of us before it became my parents' generation, which was a two-income home and latchkey kids and processed foods galore. And there's
Totally.
nothing that doesn't get cooked in a micro. Like I don't own a microwave, but that was the just little tiny steps to homesteading, and voila, now I grow food in my backyard.
Oh, I love that. And I think like you're kind of hitting on such a key historical piece of, your parents and probably their parents, right?
Yes.
Might be a little bit closer even yet today to homesteading just because of
Yes.
where the western part of the world and the US specifically has gone over time. But I know one of the big pieces that we got deep into in my early nutritional training was like looking at the work of Western A. Price. You might be familiar with him as
Yes.
a dentist who traveled and, really was interested in like how does processed foods and some of these like refined flours and, processed oils affect human health, mostly from a dental standpoint. But what was so great was this book actually correlated then other physical degeneration symptoms in the body. And what you're describing, I think, is like the foundation of where most people need to start to look in terms of just the food supply and how we're sourcing our food, how we're cooking our food. It doesn't have to be complicated. And yet, what's so funny about this is like a lot of people that reach out to me are more interested in talking about the 25 supplements they can take. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Like, what are you eating first and foremost? Because that is kind of to me like where we all need to go. And once you start to learn those skills that your great great grandparents had in terms of how to properly source food or grow it and
Mhm.
then prep it from scratch. It sounds so simple, but I think this is kind of a dying art, Elizabeth. Like I truly talk with people all the time that don't have a regular habit of even cooking in their own kitchens. It's like grab and go type of thing, right?
Yes. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that was me. I mean, I think that's why I'm such a good person to be sharing this. The homesteader movement, which is traditional foods, it
Yeah.
is growing. There's a comeback. People are going, this is not enough. These Pop Tarts are not doing it for me. My kids' teeth are
Totally.
rotting and they need braces. Why do we need braces? So a
Yeah.
hat tip to Weston A. Price Foundation. I'm one of the volunteers for the chapter in Orange County, California.
Oh, sweet.
And if you go to Western A. Price Foundation, you can find chapters. So if you're looking for, like your listeners are looking for community where they can actually talk to people about real food, check out Western A. Price Foundation. It
Yeah.
will it will help you. It's remarkable. And so my husband actually bought the Nourishing Traditions book 20 years ago.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I was so disconnected from my food that I say this often and it sounds a bit it's very humbling now, but I used to think that people that were in the kitchen really didn't have important tasks to do. And like if you were busy like me and you had a
Yeah.
career like me, then obviously you couldn't cook. And it was the most detrimental mindset that I had in my life. And so when I hear you say like your patients are coming and they're talking about supplements and you're just like, can you just get some meat stock in you? Just
Exactly.
something easy. And I hear
Yeah.
that a lot with my patients. This patient compliance is difficult because
Mhm.
we've been taught that health comes from outside, and that's not true. Traditional Chinese medicine would say health comes from inside, but we just have to help the body a little. And you
Yeah.
can't run a car on water, right? You can't run a
Right.
body on processed foods. You just cannot. And so I learned that because I got really sick. Uh,
Oh,
Doing that didn't work, and that's when I learned the hard way that, oh, I have to practice what I preach, which is actually get some real food in me, get some real food in my family, and create systems to make it easy to do. So I don't
Yeah.
spend a lot of time, except for washing dishes. I have not figured out a system to make dishes put themselves, like rinse themselves off, put themselves in the dishwasher, like and come out. They don't, sadly. If someone could
Yeah.
invent that, that would be great. But this
Right.
idea of like meat stock, like this morning while I was making my veggie juice, I was spooning out meat stock into a mason jar that's going to go in my fridge. And now I have, and then I make some thermoses, and now I have meat stock all day long. And one of the secrets to meat stock for those that are listening, like, what is the big deal?
Yeah.
It's different from bone broth. It's actually using the cartilage, and we've got a lot of nutrients in there that don't just come with just bones. And what you're
Mhm.
doing is you are repopulating your gut with healthy, amazing nutrients. And so for me, leaky gut, what was what made me sick? It was what caused me to be bedridden for weeks, homebound for months, and unable to work for years. And I
Yeah.
don't want our patients to get there. I want
Right.
them to find this episode before they have to have this, you know, calamity in their lives, which was a calamity for me and also a blessing. And so I think that's what you're doing too, right? You went through some health crises, and then you're like, now I know how to teach people how to heal themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. No, so true. And as you're saying all this, like I'm even thinking back to my early training and with becoming a nutrition therapy practitioner, like thank God when I chose that program, it kind of like started me right on the path of ancestral healing diets, like the whole work of Weston A. Price looking at kind of how did people, even foods that we could argue are more challenging to digest because they've got phytates in them or these other anti-nutrients, right? Like traditional cultures ate them, but they prepared them in a way, right? They were able to soak them or sprout them to make them more digestible. And that information was gold, Elizabeth. And where I started working with clients early on was totally around diet. It was like, let's take a look at what you're eating and start to map out some like easy steps or swaps or preparation changes we can make that feel doable to get you going the right direction. And like you said, once you have a template, you kind of build from there. And truth is, it is going to take time invested in the kitchen. Like there's no way, kind of like you said with the dishwasher, like we can't snap our fingers and like fabricate these foods from thin air. But as you get going, you get more efficient. And with the time you're spending, like you just said, you're probably using that cartilage from cuts of meat you're using in other ways and then creating the meat broth from it, right? And like
That's
doubling up the
exactly right.
efforts.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it's like and then get like a second or get 2 freezers, right? Like get a big space where you can start to like build some
Hmm.
freezer stock and just make it so worth it because if you're gonna budget the time, it's well worth getting your 100% out of the stuff that you're doing and then being able to create that stock so that when you're having a busy day or you need a little extra, it's there and then it's
Hmm.
already prepped and it's like it's awesome. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that you're talking about this because in the book we talk about the three myths that need to be deconstructed, which is I don't have time, I don't have money, and I don't have it's too difficult, it's too
Yeah.
complicated. So I
Yeah.
don't have time, we find time, right? We habit stack, which means as I'm doing the veggie juice at the same time as it's grinding, I'm doing my meat stock. The second
Yeah.
is what you talked about, money, right? So I buy a chicken and now I've got, there's two of us in the house. So I've got, 5 meals out of it. And then
Yeah.
on top of it, I take the carcass and as we're eating it, I'm throwing in the freezer, but what's left, I just throw in a crock pot. And then I take the bones that I'd saved, put them in the crock pot, maybe throw some chicken feet in there because feet is like magical for nutrient dense food. And then
Yeah.
now I've got this sixth meal, which is really medicine. I believe meat stock is medicine, and so is fermentation, and so is kefir. Have you started doing your own kefir yet? Because
I've
we
done
need to.
it. I've done both water and like the yogurt based kinds.
Is
Yeah.
it's amazing and it's very simple, right?
It
It's
is.
so I
It is.
started doing kefir because you can leave it on the counter. I didn't have to heat it, and I was all about get rid of as many steps. You take the grains, you put it in milk, you let it sit. That's
Yeah.
that's kefir, and then you take
Yep.
the grains out, you put them in more milk. It's that easy, friends. And
Yeah.
what kefir does is it's different than yogurt. The yogurt has microbes and healthy bacteria that will go in your gut and kind of help clean it up and create little happy homes, and then off it goes when you poop again.
Right.
My one friend said that I should always have a drinking game whenever I'm talking about digestion, and it should be every time Elizabeth says poop. So, friends, if you're listening, every time I say poop, drink some kombucha. Okay,
There you
some a
go. I
little shot of
love it. A
kombucha.
healthy drinking challenge. That's
Healthy
great.
drinking challenge. So the beauty about kefir is it actually colonizes. It's a little different than yogurt. And so every time you
Mm,
put it in, it's creating homes. It's like setting up shop and it's amazing for candida. It is like candida. Meat stock and kefir are just incredible for cutting the tentacles of candida. And because candida goes into your organs and it gets all,
it
it's a
can root
mess,
in
right?
there.
It can root
Yes.
in there. And it's
Yeah.
one of the main reasons of cancer. And people don't realize that when we say you've got candida overgrowth, right? Because candida in balance is very good. And
Right.
so kefir is one of my favorite things. And it's another, what you said, I don't have time. This is something that's very easy to do once you create the systems.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine this is all laid out in your book, right?
Yes. Yes, it
That's
is.
awesome. Yeah, this should be like a staple for every person listening. I'm almost thinking to myself, Elizabeth, I should really like link this in my program for my clients because, like you try to teach, and this is always the
Yes.
limitation of practitioners, and you're one as well. So you
Yes.
understand kind of it's like you can automate some of it by creating little like lessons for people to watch, which actually really can help. But then there's the whole like sometimes just having a resource literally there in
Hmm.
the kitchen while you're attempting to do this is a
Hmm.
make or break, especially if
Yeah.
it's somebody who really to date hasn't had a lot of experience in the kitchen. And I've worked with so many people that have said, like, I'm terrified that, I mean, I could follow a recipe and I would still screw it up. And it's like, oh
Hmm.
God, I feel you, right? But
Hmm.
part of it is like, I think if they start fairly easy, they've got a really good
Yes.
guide, you build that confidence, and then once you have successes, it's like building from there, right? You can take on more.
That's exactly right. And
Yeah.
if someone's out there and very intimidated, I would say the first thing to do is bake a chicken. Bake a
Yeah.
chicken and then make meat stock out of it because
Yeah.
that's one of the easiest fast foods you can have. I'm going to have chicken for lunch tonight and today and it's cold because, you can make it into a salad, you could heat it up and make it on a sandwich. Like you can just do so many things with it. I will say that chicken is not the most satiating. And as a recovered vegetarian,
Mm,
which I think we'll talk about a little
we should
bit,
talk about that.
I
Yeah.
didn't realize how important beef and lamb was for satiation and the level of calm that you get when you're eating
Mm,
animal fats. I had no idea. I did not consider myself. I would say that I'm more on the depressive side than the anxiety side, which they're just two sides of the same coin. But when
yeah.
I started having deeply nourishing animal fats, it was like, oh, I'm so relaxed right now. Like I feel so
Yeah.
content. And I think
Yeah.
that was my body saying, girl, you are onto something. You are like, this is working. This is working.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's actually talk about the vegetarian story, Elizabeth, because you and I kind of both have a
Mhm.
similar, it could be similar story, but I know you and I both are recovered vegetarians. Like we had kind
Yes.
of shared that prior to this episode. So I'm so curious just to hear about kind of what got you into vegetarianism, what came of that, and then what got the light bulb to go off that led you to going back to meats and figuring all this out.
I'm glad you're asking. And this is the first time I'm talking about it publicly. So it might be a little bumpy, but you can keep me on track. And I would love
I
to hear
will.
your story because I've heard a number of your episodes, but I haven't heard that piece. I might have missed that episode.
Yeah.
So it started when I was 16. I came from a meat-loving home that was also not, it was nutrient deplete. Like there just wasn't a lot of real food in the house.
Yeah.
But it was meat and potatoes. And my mom was working all day long. So when we got home, we just ate gallons of hyper pasteurized milk with cereal, right? That was your meal when you got home from work because of school because no one was home. And then we'd
Yeah.
have a little bit of whatever they brought. But at 16, I started um, reading magazines that were geared towards teenagers, and they were talking about all of the madness around animal cruelty and commercial farming and industrial food. And I was horrified. And I was an animal lover. And so I made a pledge. It was an ethical reason. I decided to stop eating meat for ethical reasons.
Yeah.
And I just, at that point, I just seen a lot of advertisements in my little magazines about how dangerous this was. But no one ever talked to me about regenerative art, agriculture. No one ever talked to me about animals that live incredible lives and then are used and we had these resources we use with respect and dignity. No
Mhm.
one discussed that. It was just meat is bad, meat is murder was one of the
Yeah.
slogans. And so I remember the first 6 months of becoming a vegetarian, I was having dreams about eating food. I would wake up in my dream, I would wake up in my dream, walk to the refrigerator and eat meat. And so I think my body was saying, please give me some protein. And I
Yeah.
didn't listen to it. So I was in my teens and 20s an ice cream French fry vegetarian,
Yeah.
which,
Oh gosh.
you're already eating terrible foods in your teens, but I was also not giving myself any strength. And so I was constantly sick. I had and this goes along with, I'm sure you see it with your patients. In Chinese medicine, the lung and the large intestine are very closely linked. So if you
Yeah.
have problems with constipation, if your digestion's not working, you are you're prone to lung issues.
Mm.
I had chronic bronchitis, constantly ill all the time. And I just did what the doctors told me, which was antibiotics every 4 months or
Oh
every
yeah.
3 months. And so I had this terrible gut microbiome. My mood swings were all over the place. I loved sugar because it was vegetarian.
Yeah.
And then I did that for 27 years.
Oh wow.
27 years. Yeah. And I attribute my homesteading grandma to why I survived as long as I did. And then it came crashing down. I suddenly had a period for I think it was 9 to 11 weeks. My memory was gone. I remember going and hanging out with friends in the afternoon and crying and saying, "I'm so tired. I don't understand why I'm so tired." And
Oh
then
wow.
I just slowly went down. And as an acupuncturist and holistic healthcare practitioner, I wanted to get a Western diagnosis for my Eastern issue, and then I was going to treat it with Eastern methods.
Oh, that's so
And
fun.
yeah, because I don't know why. I think I just, and
It
so
made sense.
I was like, just make it make sense. And they
Yeah.
didn't, right? After 7 different doctors or neurologists, every time I went to them, there was something wrong that required more tests.
Oh
Oh, your
god.
thyroid and your brain's not working. Oh, they checked me out for ovarian cancer because I was bleeding all the time.
Oh
But
gosh.
no one had any answers. And a lot, like I fatty liver, and I wasn't an alcoholic. Like, how is that possible? Well, that's possible if you eat a lot of processed foods with seed oils. That's how it's
Exactly.
possible. Like, you poison
Exactly.
yourself without knowing. I was the good girl that was poisoning myself. And
Yeah.
finally, my husband was having dreams about me dying. I was having dreams about, metaphorical, like we both knew that I was on the road um, to debilitation. And
Yeah.
then lastly, I could not stand up from sitting. Like my legs stopped working. I didn't have the strength. I would have to, if I was going to get something on the floor, like in a cabinet lower, I would sit down to put it away, like a dish or something. And then I'd have to call my husband to get me up because I
Oh wow.
couldn't get up. And that is when I stopped working, and my bowels started, I would lose my bowels because everything from my waist down was not working. And my
Oh
brain just was not connecting. My nervous system was shutting down. And so I
yeah.
went and got a diagnosis from one of my Eastern practitioners, an herbalist, who's an acupuncturist like me, but it's nice to get treated from someone outside of you.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so he looked at my tongue and my pulse, and he's like, "Oh, well, you've got yin separating yang. That's what's happening." Now,
Yeah.
yin separating yang, it means that you're one step away from coma and death. Like that's the
Yeah.
next. And I was like, it woke me up. I was like, "Oh no, I have a decision to make. Am I going to live, or am I going to let myself just atrophy?" And so I stopped working. My husband said that he was going to insist that day he was going to have a talk with me about no longer working. And the first few weeks, I was starting to get the beginnings of bed sores because I was so tired that I wasn't moving at all. I couldn't move.
Oh
And then
god.
I remember I started doing functional medicine and acupuncture. Now, I was pretty weak, so I couldn't do a lot of needles. And
Yeah.
then I didn't do herbology, but I started looking at Chinese medicine. But I was so sick that I wasn't able to treat myself or anyone else.
Yeah.
And I remember a doctor saying to me, a functional medicine practitioner saying, I don't say this to vegetarians, but vegetarians don't get better, they don't
Yeah.
get well. And I've learned since then that, I mean, there are so many difference in vegetarians. For example, for those of you that are giving birth to children, midwives will say that vegetarians, their perineum shreds when the baby's coming out. Instead of like a nice clean rip, they just shred because
Oh,
we've lost muscle mass, we've lost the structure that's integral to our cells.
Yeah.
And so there's just so many things. I live in Southern California, so there's a lot of sun, and I'm relatively pale with my
Yeah.
Belarusian heritage and my Irish heritage. I'm pale. And I remember when we first moved here, I had to dress like a full-on nun. Like I was covered in cotton clothing head to toe, and I would still burn if I were 5 minutes out in the sun. As soon as I started eating meat, I could sit out for 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Now I can be out for an hour without burning. And so I looked up online, and it said that vegetarians can't process the sun because of the lack of B vitamins and stuff. Now, people will say, "Well, I can have B vitamins in the gel caps," but I don't do any of that. I don't need some synthetic plastic-like substance to go into my body. Like I want to heal with real food, and that is
Right.
how I was able to do it. And now it's amazing what my body can do.
Oh, wow. That is a very long time to be on that path. And then
Yeah,
even that level of debilitation, that's
yeah.
incredible, Elizabeth. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, in my case, it was only about a decade. I believe it was maybe just a little over a decade, but there are some similarities actually to your
Tell
story.
me.
Yeah. So similar to you, I think I converted to vegetarianism when I was maybe 16 or 17. Um, Kind of similar reasons, but a little bit different at the time. So I was always a very active kid. I did swim teams through my teenage years. My best friend, who was also on swim team with me, was a vegetarian, and I really admired her. So I think part of it was just wanting to be like her more. And
Hmm.
her reason for doing it was the animal reasons too. She was like, I don't like the idea of, like, she would say it this way: if I had to go out and shoot a chicken and eat it, I couldn't ethically do it, so therefore I won't eat chicken, right? Like, that was kind of
Hmm.
her thinking, and to me, that made sense at the time. I was like, "Yeah, I don't think I could do that either. Maybe I should do this vegetarian thing." And I think this kind of is also a testament to just how faddish and trendy our dietary culture is in the US, and truly back then, this would have been, like, the mid to late '90s. I thought a vegetarian diet was actually the most healthful diet you could do, right? Like that was just the one of the popular thinking, and I was like, "Oh, this has gotta help with, like, my athletic endeavors. Why wouldn't I do this?" Right? Au contraire, right? Like, I wouldn't have known this until I came full circle and got trained as a nutritionist, but I remember going into college. I did like lightweight rowing in college, so that was even more intense, more taxing. All this time I'm doing a vegetarian diet. And the first thing that happened to me, and this won't surprise you at all, is I completely dropped my menstrual cycle. And that
Mm.
was partly as a result, I think, of just the intense training and probably not eating enough just in general.
Mhm.
But I have no doubt that being on a vegetarian diet also furthered that potential, right? And so life went on. I did like some study abroad through college. And then when I was in graduate school, my country that I was going back and forth to that I absolutely loved was Japan. So I was like back in Japan in graduate school for like a year. And by this point, I had friends over there. And I mean, I was having some weird stuff happen. I was still going out and like running, doing these like long runs and swimming at the pool. And then I took this job where I was working like almost a night shift. It was just a part time kind of fun job at a restaurant, and I thought this will be great. I can really, really get good at my Japanese. But the hours were like 10 p.m. to like 2 or 3 a.m. And I had never worked that type of job before, Elizabeth. So that went on for maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And then I started to have problems. Like when I would get up around noon, I would just feel really out of it. And then one day and it would take me a long time to get my head on straight and kind of get going for the day. And then one day I woke up, and then within like seconds of standing, I passed out, and I didn't even realize that's what had happened until I came to. And I was like, okay, I'm really concerned now. Something is not right. And so I reached out to my Japanese friend, and this will be like interesting for you to hear. She was fascinated with Chinese medicine. And so immediately she goes, "You need to come see my Chinese herbalist like right away, and I'm going to come with you." And so I'm like, "Okay." And I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I was like, "Sure, this is great. Whatever. Like, we'll just go into this like herbalist thing." I was so whatever, like open to anything. Right. So we go, and I didn't really want to go to the doctor in Japan. That actually seemed like more intimidating to me. So we go to this Chinese herbalist, and that was my first experience with Chinese medicine. And
Mm.
this woman, it was so fascinating. We're like all sitting, the three of us there, dialoguing in Japanese. She's Chinese, I'm American. Then we got my Japanese friend. And she's like, "Let me see your tongue. Let me feel your pulses." And then she's like, "Let me see your lower leg." And she pressed her thumb in along my tibia, and she's like, "See that? That's edema." And I'm like, oh my God, I have edema. Like I would have never known that if she didn't do that. I'm just like, and she would ask me these questions and then I'd start to give her the answer. And it was like she already knew what the answer
Mhm.
was going to be. And I'm just like, oh, this is blowing my mind. Like, who is this lady? She's got to be like part medium. It's almost like she knows this stuff. And how does she know this stuff? And like,
Mhm.
my doctor's never been able to answer. So, anyhow, long story short, she basically looked me in the eye and she's like, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to give you two formulas. Oh, this was already by the time I was also beyond just the missing period. I was also having like some bouts of loose stools. So she's like, I'm going to give you two formulas.
Mhm.
One is going to bring your cycle back, and the other is going to help with the diarrhea. And she's like, but you have to start eating meat. Like she literally is like, I'm not giving you a choice. Like she said it that
Mhm.
emphatically, Elizabeth. And I was just
Mhm.
like, okay, because I mean, she's a lot older and she really had this like confidence. And I'm just like, I mean, what the heck? I'm all the way here. I'm halfway in this process. I paid this money. Like, I might as well take her seriously and just do it to the nth degree. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, from that day forward, I started eating smaller and smaller amounts of meat. And in the beginning, I'm like, this is so weird. But then you like your body actually surprisingly quickly adapts. And I think it took maybe a year of working with the herbs. I remember they brought the cycle back, which was just like shocking to me, and that
Mhm.
got me totally hooked on holistic health approaches. I was like, this is amazing. This isn't drugs. Awesome, right? But it
Mhm.
still took me working with having like a full on like meat included healthful nutrient dense diet for like probably another good 2 to 3 years
Yeah.
before I could go off the herbs and have like
Mhm.
a regular period. So it took time even after 10 years of doing that to fully recover, but just thinking back on that, kind of like you, I do kind of wonder if that wasn't a big piece that contributed to like the early foundation of like gut health. I mean, there was a childhood piece too, but like it certainly
Mhm.
didn't help that I was a vegetarian in
Mhm.
terms of just having like major IBS issues like after that period of time, right? So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. And I think, well, firstly, I think it's shocking how little doctors are, what little training they're given for nutrition. It's
Yeah,
absolutely astounding.
it
And
is.
in Chinese medicine in grad school, we learn nutrition and herbs are go hand in hand with acupuncture, and you're constantly talking about moving. I was a bit stubborn in my 30s though, and I was in my 30s
Yeah.
when I did grad school, and I remember
Yeah.
one of my teachers in her broken English is like, vegetarian's okay if you want to Buddha Buddha all day, but you're not going to be Buddha Buddhaing. So my husband would always be like, are you going to Buddha Buddha all day? Or are we going to get some like some nutrient dense food in you? And I'm like, I do
Totally.
love to Buddha Buddha all day, but I don't necessarily have the abundance to Buddha Buddha all day. And I'm not interested in becoming a Buddhist nun. So I think I'm going to have to figure out how to get nutrient dense food. And I just think that there are these angels that come into our healthcare angels that go, no, sweetie, your body needs food. And we've
Yeah.
been programmed by so many different um, influences, like public
Yes.
influences. I would even say now that if if this video ever goes viral, we're going to be in big trouble
Yeah,
from
true.
the militant vegetarians. I was never
Yes.
militant. I was always like, you do you, I'll do me, and that's why I would always say it's for ethical reasons. I just didn't want to argue the health benefits. I didn't want to argue it, and
Right.
so I know that that's going to tick people off, but this is life experience that you and I have had, and we can
Yeah.
see how our bodies have changed. I can see that if I have a light meal, vegetarian meal, just because that's all I can have, that I'm hungrier faster. I can also see that for those of you that are thinking, what is sustainable agriculture and what's regenerative agriculture? Joel
Yeah.
Salatin is a great author for looking that up. I think one of my favorite books of his is Folks This Ain't Normal, and
Oh,
he works for he owns Polyface Farms, and
yeah.
they're all about allowing the animal to be the animal. Like the cows
Yeah.
move every day on new pasture. The chickens are always getting new bugs
Yes.
through their pasture rotation. I mean, and the land is incredibly beautiful because of it, because
Yeah.
he's working in the cycles of nature, which is what you're supposed to do. And
Yeah.
that is the same for our bodies. Our bodies are terrains that we need to strengthen and fortify. And the best way to do that is to not run your car on fumes, on sheer water.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, Elizabeth. And another one I'll put out there that I saw years ago that I thought was a great documentary is Sacred Cow. I don't know if you've ever seen
I
that one, but
haven't.
that was one recommended by the Nutrition Therapy Association. And this is such a great piece just to speak to real quickly because there's still a lot of for lack of a better word, like dogma around like the China study and forks over knives and those types of philosophies that supposedly show science backing the philosophy of a vegetarian diet still like being the supreme way to eat for health. But this is where it gets very hard from, I think, the layperson consumer standpoint is like when everybody's saying they have the science to back it, you have to go a level deeper and really look at like, is this true though? Right.
Mhm.
And if we look back at ancestral diets, like there's very few that would not include animal meats in them unless it was part and parcel of like the region they lived in. And even then, I believe like some of the like tribes in Africa that are more vegetarian leaning still ate like bugs and animal like pieces when they were like more available to them. Or I can't remember.
Mhm.
It's been a minute since I looked at the Weston A. Price book, but it's not like you just look at kind of like ancient wisdom. Like it was never even Chinese medicine. Like I don't even think the only culture that I'm aware of that maybe argues for a complete vegetarian diet would be like potentially yogic philosophy as a means
Mhm.
of like energetic ascension. And this is like getting to kind of an esoteric like level. And I've kind of thought about this in my head. So I'll just put this out there. But not to say some people can't do okay on that diet, but I think we're talking about like as a culture, we live in a like a stress pot, right? Like
Yes.
people are generally not well. Um, when the health of the physical body is not good, I would argue trying to do a plant-based diet in that condition is probably the worst thing you can do. Now, if you are like a Buddhist or a monk or whatever, like you're on this plane of existence where you're kind of removed from the average day-to-day stresses that most people are dealing with, maybe you can alchemize like a plant-based diet in a way energetically that can still work, but for the average person, I just think that's a terrible path to go down, right? Like the so much more likely to heal if you have a nutrient dense, high quality meat included diet. Like that's just kind of been the way my brain has tried to understand like how could both of these things sort of be true, but for most people, I think staying with a meat included diet is going to be very healing for them. Are you struggling with chronic diarrhea or constipation and have been told by your doctor that there's either nothing wrong or that you're going to need to take a med for the rest of your life to control symptoms? What if there was another way? A way that empowered you to take back your health through a smart nutritional strategy and through running the right testing to identify true root causes. If you are ready to say yes to self empowerment and to starting the journey to real improvement in your gut health, click the link to grab my free e guide.
I'm I'm about to blow your mind. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
What do you know about Buddha's last meal?
I don't know anything about that.
It was meat.
Was it really?
Buddha was not a vegetarian.
Oh, that's so
Vegetarianism came, it's
interesting.
very interesting. And so when we talk about the science, which
Yeah,
I'm a little shaky about the science from time to time because the
totally.
biggest question is who is paying for that science? That's it.
Yeah,
That's all.
that's it.
And you want to do a blind study yourself? Do it. Do a
Yeah,
month of vegetarian and then 2 months of, because you're going to need a month to get used to food, meat, but
yeah,
do a month or two of eating meat and see what your body responds to. It
yeah,
is remarkable when I have liver pate that I make at home, which is also very easy to make,
yeah,
how vibrant my sight gets afterwards. And so
yeah.
it's immediate. My body's like, yes, this works. And so, yeah, trust the science. Well, I would say more trust the anecdotal things that happen in your life. Trust what
Yes.
your body's telling you because you are the expert. I think we've gotten away from that. Oh, we've got
Yeah,
to listen to the experts. No, we have to listen to us. Our body knows when we get off the sugar. Like it's, if you're going to do like high sugar, it's going to give you a lot of difficulty. And you're going to be, I think you said it in the plastics and the fragrance episode that when you when you're so used to smelling all of that artificial stuff, you don't recognize it. And I think the
Yeah.
same is true of when you're doing recreational drugs or a
Mhm.
lot of alcohol or a lot of sugar or a lot of carbs, because carbs are a really sneaky way to get sugar in where you think you're not doing sugar. I am currently, but I have been refined sugar free for 15, 20 years. I've lost count, and it's
Yeah.
fantastic for my mood stabilization. But right before I got sick, I was increasing the crackers, and they were healthy, organic, like, happy faces on the crackers. And aren't these beautiful? And and they're only 5 ingredients. One of them was seed oil.
I was
And,
gonna ask. Yeah.
yeah, but it was organic seed oil. So like, like I trusted the experts. In that case was the advertising firms.
Yeah.
And they sold me up a river with really bad goods, and I got sick because of it. And so now I
Yeah.
trust what my body says, and I also trust the people that I know. Like again, when I go to the Weston A. Price Foundation chapter, there's a lot of healthy people. One of my friends happens to be a biologist there, and so we talk about mitochondria and all this stuff that I
Oh,
can
yeah.
see face to face. And I've heard the stories of other people that have healed their children from learning disabilities, from
Mhm.
dyspraxia, from autistic symptoms, and now these kids are fully functional. Some were not verbal. Before, that was always kind of like unicorn myths. And now that
Yeah.
I have a community where I'm learning this stuff, I'm meeting people that have actually done this, and that's profound. And so when I talk about chronic illness, I don't want to talk about the fact that my bowels weren't working properly or that I was too,
Right.
and I had bed sores. Like, that's not a very favorable insight. Like, it doesn't look that good. But I want people to know that if they are suffering, there is help. And you
Mhm.
can trust that if you find a few people that seem to know what they're doing and you follow them until your body is well enough to tell you what works and what doesn't work, you will be on the road to success so quickly and with such simple tasks. Like, think about what you were given when you were sick, Courtney. It
Mhm.
was a few herbs,
Mhm.
2 types of herbs, and she told you to eat more meat. That was it.
Yeah,
And
pretty
so
much.
it wasn't you need to make your own dairy, you need to go milk your own cow. None of that. Just little tiny simple steps that will
Yep.
then grow from there, right? We find
Yeah.
the circles that we love, the things that delight us, and then we
Yeah.
go forward.
Yeah.
And it all starts with just a little bit of change. And I think that the folks that are listening now, this is the change. Listening,
Right.
filling your brain with these ideas and thinking, huh, could I try kefir? It sounds kind of easy. What does it entail? Or, meat stock, that sounds kind of neat. Putting it in thermoses so I don't have to reheat it. Wow, that's interesting. All of these little tips, this is one of the best ways that you can enact change is by doing this.
Yeah, I totally agree. And as you're saying all that, just one thing that occurred to me is sometimes this is kind of a mind shift I have to work on making with people, whether they're my clients or people that just reach out to me for, knowledge. It's like, again, the supplement thing, like, well, what probiotic can I take to fix my IBS symptoms? And I'm like, well, did you actually know it's like your diet that's going to have a bigger impact? Because think about it, you can, and I've experienced this personally, kind of like what you're saying, Elizabeth, like taking probiotics, they actually don't work all that well, and then switching my diet and the foods I eat and having more profound impact from that, which makes sense because you need to be what are those bacteria in the gut actually eating? They're eating the food you're eating. And so,
Mm-hmm.
not to say that there's a set way that's going to work for everybody from a dietary standpoint, but what there is the ability to sort of self-test and iterate on what you're doing. And it's kind of like, to your point, if you don't know if something's going to work, why not try it for a little while with this like spirit of curiosity and in like, hey, maybe this will work, maybe this won't, and see, because truly, like, your own lived experience is going to be the most powerful philosophy you will ever speak from. And when I think back to being a vegetarian, sometimes I'm just like, how the hell was I actually running miles a week on that diet? Like, I don't know how I must have been snacking a lot more. I probably blocked it. It was like so traumatic. No, it wasn't that traumatic, but it's like, how did I do that? Because
Mm-hmm.
all I was eating was like corn tortilla chips and like store-bought hummus that probably had the canola oil and crap in it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like it just doesn't compute. And now it's like, not that I like to skip a meal, but if I have enough food, because I'm eating animal-based foods, I'm eating a good amount of protein, fat, it's a good balance. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
eliminating major food groups. It's like I can go meal to meal without having a breakdown in my energy or my mental health, right?
Oh, I love that reminder. It reminds me of my husband and I. So he's a foodie and he's an omnivore. And I remember maybe 10 years ago, he would want to stop at like four restaurants and look at the menu and decide what he wanted. And meanwhile, I'm like, we need to eat now. Like if we don't eat now, I'm going to start eating your hair. Like I'm just going to start munching on your ears. Like we need to eat now. And so he would always be like, "How are you doing in terms of hunger and satiation?" And now I want to look at the menu too, but my blood sugar was dropping so fast, my
Yeah.
blood sugar level, that I needed food immediately, and that's I'm no longer in that panic state anymore.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just think that these are things that people they they can empower themselves. There is a tremendous amount of empowerment when you start working on traditional skills and just figuring out what works for you. One little thing that you had mentioned was probiotics. And I
Yeah.
don't know if your listeners know this, but in 1 teaspoon of homemade sauerkraut, there are more live microbes, more probiotics
Hmm.
than an entire bottle of probiotics, of your most
I would believe
expensive
that.
refrigerated probiotics. And that's lacto fermentation. So that's not, you don't go and get vinegar soaked pickles. That's not it. And these are also very easy to do, but you could also get them like Bubby's is a good brand, and
Yeah.
Fermentation Farm. Like there's a lot, Primal Kitchen does a lot of real food. So they might
Yeah.
have a good fermentation, but I love creating it. So I
Yeah.
love I love bringing friends over and being like, see this spoon of little tiny, this is an entire bottle of that expensive stuff that you're paying $50 for, and you have to
Yeah.
refrigerating, and and half of it's died just in the transit, the
Yeah.
microbes that are in this, and this is more varied. Another one that I love is fermented garlic. Have you ever fermented your garlic before?
I have not, but I know it's possible to do.
It's
Yeah.
so easy. You just put it in salt water and
Okay.
just burp it every couple of days, and then you put it in your fridge. The thing I love about it is that it's really easy for prepping, so you can chop it up and then throw it in stuff. And but the
Uh,
most important thing is that fermented garlic is it is the most successful antibiotic against MSMR,
oh, like one of the
MS.
like bacterial infections, right?
Yeah, but maybe it's
MRSA,
SARS.
maybe?
MRSA, thank you,
MRSA.
MRSA.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
because it changes as MRSA changes. MRSA is very adaptive.
Uh,
So when you put in an antibiotic, MRSA will change with the antibiotic. It can't do that with fermented garlic. So if you want to rock your pharmacy in your home, do fermented garlic in the fridge. You can keep it for months. And you can do just take garlic and soak it in honey for it'll
yeah.
keep for years. And that
Oh,
honey and the garlic is also really quite amazing. And it's weird. It's a weird taste, but you can braise meats with it, or you could just I'll have a spoon during a spoonful during like flu and cold
cold
season,
season.
and it's
Yeah.
just absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, and actually, it's great you're bringing this up because I've heard that too, that like with fermented foods, they're a lot more concentrated, like the microbes
Yes.
growing. And there's like such a diversity there that there's no way you could replicate that with like a
That's right.
probiotic, from what I've heard. And this actually brings up a question for you too, Elizabeth, because like this is just also part of my own personal curiosity because I've dabbled with like doing kefir. I and certainly have made my own yogurt. I haven't gone so far as to like pickle or anything, but is there a like a wrong way to do this? Like, can people screw this up? Because I do think that's a common worry people have. It's like, well, what if I grow bad bacteria somehow doing this? So that might be a question you get. I'd be curious to see what you have to say about that.
That's a really good question. With pasteurized milk, you can go wrong.
You can.
With
Okay.
raw milk, you cannot. Raw milk does not rot. It
Okay.
typically doesn't mold. It
Okay.
it sours, so it'll
Okay.
taste really sour, but you can still throw it in soups or whatever you need in terms of milk.
Okay.
When you're doing fermentation of vegetables, you're always looking for fun colored mold. So if it's black mold, you can scoop it off. You're good to go.
Oh,
But if
really?
it's, yeah, but if
Okay.
it's, or white mold, but if it's brown or green or blue, or anything fun, then I would throw the batch away. Some people will argue you just scrape it off and you're good to go because
Okay.
it's only sitting on top.
Okay. Okay.
And then in terms of, I don't do pasteurized milk in terms of culture because it's just not that good for my gut. And raw milk has a lot of probiotics naturally in it. Um,
Yeah.
One more thing I will say about kefir and raw and yogurt is that if you tend towards constipation,
Yep.
then fermented cream is better. Like the higher fat content is better for your digestion. If you
Oh,
tend towards diarrhea, high
yep.
protein, so the yogurt would be better for your digestion.
Oh, interesting. And so could people then theoretically, if they're dairy sensitive, just ferment like coconut milk or coconut like cream to make yogurt, that kind of thing?
Yes, absolutely. But I would say that it's fermented dairy is such an essential part of ancestral healing in many, many cultures. So,
Mhm.
what I would say is try a few things. The first thing is because I am lactose intolerant,
Mhm.
theoretically, I get very, very sick if I had ice cream, just normal ice cream, but I
Yeah.
make fermented ice cream and I'm fine. The trick that I do is I ferment for 48 hours. And
Okay.
that fermentation, so that when I say I ferment for 48 hours, I put it on my counter for 48 hours. That's what it means.
Okay.
Like that's
Ye
the work that you do. That's it.
Yep. Okay.
I ferment for 48 hours, and that the bacteria, well, the kefir and the happy microbes, they eat a lot of the lactose, a great
Okay.
deal of the lactose, and they also eat a lot of the casein. I think it's pronounced casein, or
I
I think
think
it's
you're right.
pronounced. And
Yep.
that's a protein that people think that they're lactose intolerant, but it turns out they can't handle that protein.
Uh,
So I took raw milk once I'm on the GAPS protocol. I'm sure you've heard it, gut and
oh yeah, that's a
yeah.
great yeah,
It's
yeah.
amazing, right?
It's great
And
at diet.
so when I started doing that, you go off dairy and you just start doing fermented dairy. Well, I
Yep.
made my husband some homemade ice cream just with milk, and I
Uh-huh.
got a terrible, terrible migraine because I just couldn't handle the lactose and the casein. But
Yeah.
when I make ice cream with my 48-hour ferments,
Yeah.
it's amazing and delicious, and it gives me absolutely no side effects.
Oh, wow.
However, if you are interested in getting back on real dairy, then you want to do it. Dr. Natasha from the GAPS protocol will say you start with just a half a teaspoon and see how your
Yeah.
body responds. And,
Yeah.
you work up very slowly. And so that's what I recommend. But I don't say don't rule it out. Definitely do the kefir. And I have a friend that uses coconut cream for her ice cream, which is
Yeah.
fantastic. Okay,
Yeah.
so the ice cream recipe, because I know people are going to be like, wait, what? Hold on. She makes her own ice cream. What is this?
I
This
know,
is
I was gonna ask
yeah.
you that. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I would be interested. So it's very, very simple. And I got this from Gap Stage by Stage by Becky Plotner. It's a book
Oh,
that has a lot of great recipes, very easy, very gut friendly recipes. But one is, it's her eggnog ice cream, which I don't always put the nutmeg in. So you take fermented cream.
mhm.
You take as many egg yolks as you want because the
Yep.
egg yolks are going to give you that creamy texture and incredible cholesterol that you need, the
Yep.
good cholesterol.
Yep.
Then you put in some honey to taste and a little bit of real vanilla extract, like extract from a vanilla bean.
Yep.
And you put that in your ice cream maker, and voila, you've got the most. Now, I'll put in strawberries to make strawberry ice cream. I don't do chocolate at this point in the GAPS protocol, but eventually I will. And
Yeah.
it's phenomenal. And that's it. Egg yolks. You can do maybe one or two egg whites if you want to. Fermented cream, honey, and vanilla,
Oh, that's
and you will
awesome.
rock the world, but you'll also be eating something that's super high protein, super
Yeah,
high fat, which is the best way to let sugar into your body. And
exactly.
honey's got sweet in it. It's got the sweet
Right.
taste. So you want to make sure that you've stabilized. You always stabilize with high fat, high protein.
Yeah, and what's so cool about that is, like, I'm imagining there's no heat, right? Because you're just putting it all in an ice cream maker. So, like,
No
you think
heat.
about it, if it's raw honey, especially Manuka honey, that's got antimicrobial properties. Fermentation's gonna crowd out the bad stuff in the gut, right? So,
That's
I mean,
right.
who doesn't wanna eat ice cream that's kinda like a medication, you
It's
know?
medicine. Yeah, I
It
should
is,
start
right?
touting that. Like,
Yeah,
I will, if you come see me, I will give you
that
ice
would
cream as medicine.
you should make, like, some sort of social post. I bet people, like, because there's so many recipes, and I think people get over inundated, like, "Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
another green smoothie. I don't need that." But, like, this, I bet they'd be all over that.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And I now with Chinese medicine, we would say you want to do it seasonally. So I don't make the ice cream in the winter
Yeah.
because your body really doesn't need additional cold. But Southern California, so I've got a lot of summer. And so we start as soon as the sun came out, we were like, time to make ice cream. And I just had some
Yeah.
strawberry ice cream yesterday. And it's so easy for someone that's
Yeah.
not a cook. Like I said, I was not a cook. It is
Oh,
the most amazing thing. And for those health nuts that are spending $10 on pint of really good ice cream that isn't
mhm,
really good, now
mhm.
you for pennies on the dollar, you're making, $10 ice cream, $20 if you're doubling the batch,
Yeah.
and you've done it for very little.
Yeah, no, that is so awesome. And it's fun to have projects like that. Like, especially if you've got
Yes.
kids, like
Yes.
they will enjoy something that's a dessert that they get to participate in making. And then you're teaching them like this is actually good for you too, which I think can really start to like shift people's way of thinking. It's like sometimes I think that's why people are hesitant to do a holistic health rebuilding program because I think there's this thought like this is going to suck. It's going to be a diet, right? And some of this is coming from the Weight Watchers and Jenny Craig era and the
Yes.
whole portion controlling and calorie restricting. Like, I'm just of the philosophy, like, I never have my clients calorie count. I'm like, look, if you're eating whole real food, and definitely let's pick foods that you like too, right? But like
Right.
how many avocados or like how much ground beef can you eat in one sitting? Those are hard foods to like overeat. You know what I mean? It's like
Yes.
there's no need to like calorie count or food portion that stuff. And the funny part is, and you've probably seen this too, Elizabeth, like people will lose weight without even trying just by getting their food switched over to whole foods that are nutrient dense, right? Like that's all they're doing. They're not eating less of it. They're not restrictive fasting, timing it. They're not doing any of that. They're just changing their diet, right?
Yes, it's remarkable. When I got sick, I gained 50 pounds because I'm the body type that if you don't move, the weight comes on. And also, I
Yeah.
think I was storing a lot of toxins away from my organs. My body was
Oh,
trying to save me.
yeah.
And then, I'm postmenopausal, and like weight was not going to come off. Like it just wasn't coming off. And then when I started eating real foods, it's coming off magically. I've lost, I think, 36 pounds with no, I mean, no, I'm eating ice cream
Yeah.
whenever I want and
Yeah.
steak with butter. I mean, like I'm eating
Yeah.
really delicious stuff. I will
Yeah.
say one other thing that's pretty amazing with nutrient dense food is my hormones are regulated in that I'm not turning into an old man. Like I'm not getting furry
Yeah.
chin and like that stuff has gone away.
Yeah.
And it's remarkable to me that I was having problems with my thyroids and you could tell because my eyebrows were getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And my mom has these itty bitty eyebrows. So I was like, oh well, I guess it's just Russian. No, it's not just
Yeah.
Belarusian, it's thyroid health. And they're growing
Yeah.
back on their own. So it's amazing to see how you can have rejuvenation even after 50. That is remarkable to me because it's like, oh, maybe you'll get a little better, maybe the aches and pains, but it is very possible to heal your body, or rather to allow your body to heal by just giving it half an iota of a chance.
Exactly. Yeah, because you need all that healthy fat to build all hormones, right?
That's
And
exactly right.
even if things are going down because it is menopausal, like why not set the foundation and try to build what you can naturally with food you're eating? And then from there, if you need hormone replacement, bioidentical, whatever, it's available. But like that's I think where people kind of have this whole like band-aid approach sometimes where they're like, well, the diet, whatever, I'm doing the diet, but just give me the hormones, give me the hormones. It's like, well,
Yeah.
yeah, but don't you want to like get your body trying to do what it can first to capacity? Like that just would make sense to me, you know?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I remember when I was initially so sick, so many of my friends would call me and be like, "What you need is hormones. What you need." And I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. Like it doesn't suit me. I've stepped off the big pharma train a long time ago. I'm
Yeah.
not saying it's not right for everybody, but it's not in my consciousness. It's not something that's going to work for me. I
Yeah.
probably have more of a castor oil animal fats consciousness, and that
Yeah.
works. And it's kind of like you wouldn't tell your kid, "Oh, we're just gonna, you want to try to do something, you want to try to grow up and be well, but we're just gonna put this band-aid over it." Instead, you would allow your child the dignity of learning, and so you can
Yes.
allow your body the dignity of the chance to heal on its own, and then you
Yes.
can add the additives. Go for it. I'm not against any of that if that's what you want. For me, I was going to find a way, and my body figured it out. My body is really quite remarkable, and so is everyone else's body if given the
Oh,
chance.
yeah, absolutely. And I would almost say that back to the vegetarian thing, it's not unusual for women. I mean, myself, I experienced this to have menopausal symptoms premenopausally because they're not getting healthy fat and they're not getting the macronutrients they need to support good hormone health. And so that can be a scary thing too. And
Yeah.
but there's hope there in that if you're listening and you feel this is you, right? Like
Yeah.
there's a lot you can do. And sometimes that's the belief I have to challenge with people is like, if if eating this way, whether it's vegetarian or some other way, was working for you, we still have to circle back to like, you're reaching out to me because you don't feel well. So, from here, are you open to learning some new things and trying some new things? Right. And again, I think if people kind of get the idea of like nothing is like forever, right? Like whatever change you decide to make, look at it as this idea of, okay, this is experimentation. But what I always encourage people to do is like, but if you can keep a log, right? Because the human
Mm-hmm.
brain forgets, like
Mm-hmm.
any big change you're making dietarily or otherwise, like even if it's like at the end of the week, you kind of think back over how was my energy? How was my brain function? Better if you do it at the end of every day or the beginning of every day, whichever works. That can be powerful because now as you're recording, okay, this week I'm actually mindfully having more red meat or whatever it is, right? And then you can go
Mm-hmm.
through every day and kind of rate, how is your energy? How is your appetite? How is your like mental health? How is your digestive health, right? Like you can pick all the markers you want. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's powerful stuff for sure.
I think a symptom log was one of the most important things I did. And I guess as a recovering type A, um, like I loved checking off boxes but it was
Yeah.
really good to, even as a practitioner, someone that's pretty conscious of my body, I had to go back and go, have I had back pain in the past few weeks? Oh, I
Yeah.
started using castor oil to detox my liver, which I love your episode on detoxing liver. Oh my gosh. Everyone should
Was
listen
that
to
good?
it.
Did you like that?
It was like the best 15 minutes ever while washing my dishes. I was like, yes, 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 yes. I was so happy. Like, I can't
Yes.
wait to talk to her about our detox episode.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, once you're able, like, when you look back and go, oh, yeah, I haven't had that chronic cough that I had. It's been 3 weeks, it's been 2 weeks, or no, I've had it be gone for 2 weeks before. So I would say that, right now it's not data that is really important. So whatever I'm doing hasn't done it yet. But when I hit 4 weeks of no chronic cough or whatever, foot pain in the morning, brain fog, like every single symptom that you have, every single complaint, which is hard a lot of times because patients are, we're Americans. We don't complain. We just get up and work. This
Yes.
is the time to complain. Write down every little thing that's bothering you and then start looking. And over the months, you will start seeing this is working. This hasn't really had any effect. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm seeing that this other thing is increasing. What happened that made it increase? Right? Like
Yeah.
when my migraines, like it was very obvious that I got migraines from that ice cream. And all I did was
Yeah.
like a few spoons. Like I was testing it. I never do
Oh,
that anymore.
wow.
Now we only do fermented, but
Yeah.
it's just you can find that through the log.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, it's super powerful. So there's a question I've been thinking about that I want to ask you, and I'm just so curious about your thoughts on this. But I think that the people listening would be really interested in this because putting myself in the place of a lot of the clients that are actually head and shoulders above the majority, but the biggest challenge they have is how do they build a community of people around them that might not be on the same path. And I think about just homesteading. If we think about it just from even just being committed to a nutrient dense, let's say moving in the direction of Weston A. Price, like Sally Fallon, Nourishing Traditions, right? Like making that migration that direction and just how daunting that can seem for a newbie or somebody who's just starting out on that journey. Like the biggest kind of like I think frustration people have shared with me is like I'm doing it, but it's so hard, Courtney, because like my spouse maybe isn't 100% on board, or my family of origin, when I get together with them at parties, like they don't get it. And sometimes they're asking me questions and it feels like they're ridiculing me or criticizing me, right? And you might have lived this too. I don't know, Elizabeth, but just so curious because like your whole passion is teaching people how to homestead, recognizing that this can be like an entire lifestyle shift that happens over time. And how do you build community around that if this is kind of your first foray into it?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I think we're social human beings. Like human
Yeah.
beings are social, that we're social beings, right? We need that connection and we need acceptance and acknowledgement and encouragement. And sometimes when you're speaking a different language, right? If you went to Japan and you only spoke French, you would
Yeah.
not get as much community as if you knew how to
Oh,
speak
no.
Japanese, right? It
Yes.
brings you into the culture. And so I was actively looking for when I first started, I was actively looking for people that were doing similar things. And remember, I said homesteading it's a wheel with many spokes. So
Yes.
one is gardening. So I would look for gardeners, people that garden in their front and backyards. And I made a few friends with some people that garden that have beautiful gardens, and they couldn't wait to show me their garden. And the next thing you know, they were propagating things. Propagation is one of the tools for saving money in homesteading. You go somewhere, you clip a branch off of a plant, you stick it in water, and now you've got the same plant in
Oh,
your home.
cool.
So propagation is amazing. And so I would start looking for people that were interested. And then also I talk about it with incredible enthusiasm.
Mm,
So I think that um, my biggest talent in terms of creating connection with others is my curiosity. I could easily ask you 500 questions right now. Like we could turn this podcast to the Courtney show where it's like Elizabeth interviewing Courtney. What was that all about? Because I want to know what makes other people tick. And I think curiosity is something that it's a muscle that can be worked. You can work it, you can
yes.
strengthen it. And
Yes.
once you have it, sky's the limit. Your life will be so much more exceptional when you're curious about others. With that being said, there's a give and take. And so I remember for the longest time, I didn't really know how to receive attention. I didn't know how to claim my seat at the table. I was just the really good listener. And eventually, your curiosity is great, but you want to share stuff too. So when people say, "How are you doing?" to me, I'm learning now to step up and go, I just planted a mango tree in my backyard and I love mangoes and I made it big enough that I never have to climb a ladder and I'm so excited. And some people will be like, huh, okay, well, the traffic was hard to get here. And others will go, oh my gosh, you're growing mango in your backyard. And like, I have a friend that we went out to tea tasting recently. And during the lunch afterwards, I was just talking about my love of kefir and how all the beautiful things that it does to your gut. And they happen to be very interested in gut health. And the next
Yeah.
thing she said was, I would love to learn how to make kefir. And I'm like, I have some extra grains. And so I often will invite my curious friends over and I will teach them. They will just have a lecture where they go home, they bring a mason jar, some milk, and they go home with kefir grains and kefir that's cooking. And that's one of my favorite things is that I get thank you notes from my friends for like teaching them how to do
Oh,
kefir, or I
wow.
get pictures of their kefir babies or their fermentations or their food forest that they've created. And
Yeah.
so one of the ways to create community is to educate through enthusiasm. Like I'm not a know-it-all. I don't run around. I'll just drop a little seed. Like I just grew this mango tree. I love mango. How did you do that? Or
Yeah.
I didn't have a problem with egg shortage because I know my farmer that gives me eggs. How did you find a farmer that gives you eggs? And then I will explain that and I keep those avenues open and I continue to reconnect because I think in our social media day and age, which I don't have social media. I got rid of it. It just sucks the mind out of me. And I did it for business and it was still sucking the brain out of me. So I got rid
Yeah.
of it. And so I have extra time and that extra time I use to check up on my friends, send a note, make a telephone call, send a text. Just I'm thinking of you. And that creates that community connection. The next thing I do is I look for things that interest me that I know other people will be gathering. For example, at the tea tasting, one of the producers, she goes and she gets tea and brings it home from, I think she goes to China and she's really great. Her name is Linda Louis from Bana Tea Company, and she does
Okay.
all pu'er, which is fermented tea, which is
Oh, yeah, it's beautiful. I love
you've
that
had
tea.
it.
So
It's
good.
amazing,
I've
right?
even had the green. I like the green the
Mhm.
best. Oh, there you go. You
Fermented,
got it.
yeah, I got some pu'er.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fermented green, I didn't know that there
Yeah,
was.
you can get it, like, it's not easy to find, but it's
Mhm.
like a green version of pu'er. Because of all the teas, I like green, just all types of green the best, so, like, yeah, no, the green is really, really good, but yeah, no, just in general, pu'er is awesome.
Pu'er is awesome. And so I became friends with her. And so I invited her to Weston A. Price chapter to give a talk on regenerative farming in China and what pu'er is. And
Yeah.
so we've been friends for years because I keep inviting her to my house for friends to come over and tea taste. And so when we went to the festival, we were talking to other people, but when we got to her table, it was a friend that I knew and we could discuss. And then at that community gathering, there were other tea lovers. My husband is a tea connoisseur. So
Oh.
we were talking about tea and then someone spoke French, which made me very excited. So I started speaking French and then my husband then left me, but I was I was finding yeah, you would know as a Japanese speaker, right? You find someone that speaks
Yes.
Japanese, I'm going to be their best friend
I
because I
I
want to
love that
practice.
we share the language, passion
Yeah.
too, that's great.
Yeah. And it's this little like you have so many interesting aspects of your life. So just find ways to connect with others and look for those ways and then actively get some clothes on, and brush your teeth and your hair and then go out and engage in the world because you're just not going it's amazing. I love podcasts because we can have these one-on-one conversations and it's not very noisy. It's wonderful, but you
Yeah.
also have to go outside of your house and reconnect with people.
Yeah, I totally feel you on that. And with me too, the social media thing is kind of a love-hate. I see it as sort of an ends a means to an end in that
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to not have a presence if you have a practice or a business nowadays because you can reach
Yeah.
so many people, but I'm very efficient and it's like the same idea. I mean, in some ways I'm so grateful for this, but I really never got sucked in. Even back in the days of early Facebook, it was kind of
Yeah.
like maybe for a minute or two in my early
Mm-hmm.
20s, it was like fun to post some photos, but as my life got busier and I became a mom, it just never really stuck to me. And maybe it's showing my age a little bit and just kind of still be wired in that like old school face to face way of relating to people, but like
Mm-hmm.
I've actually heard this said, even as of late, that this is the way culture is starting to go now. Like we're circling back to people
Really?
actually preferring, yeah, people actually preferring more in person, like face to face engagements. Now, I don't know if this is truly true or not. This is just something I've heard. But whether it's true or not, I still think that because we're just not those opportunities maybe aren't as like copious as they used to be. Like we don't, I
Yes.
mean, just think about your average neighborhood. Do you really know who you live next to nowadays? Most people don't, right? Like
Yes.
it's pretty common that you have a very like come and go relationship with the people around you. So I
Yes.
think when you as a curious passionate person in the world show up and it's like extending your stories and your personal experiences and then the invitation like, "Hey, by the way, if this is interesting, like come on over and I'll do this with you," right? Like
Mhm.
that can actually be quite impactful for people because I think in the day-to-day world, like people really aren't getting these kinds of engagements like they used to be. And I think the other thing I'm hearing just from your answer to the question too, Elizabeth, is like it takes a little bit of courage and also like passion was the word I used, but I think passion and curiosity, you can't be too afraid to like pursue something that interests you, whether it's whole foods eating or tea or gardening, right? Like, I would just say start with one of those spokes, like in your book, right? Like, just pick the
Yes.
one that interests you the most. And
Yes.
even if no one in your life supports it, including your spouse,
Hmm.
like, make a date, do a little internet research if you have to, like, identify a venue, an organization, wherever, right? And just go put yourself out there because I think sometimes that's the biggest obstacle. People just get
Yes.
so in their heads and they're like, "Oh, but I'm so used to the same people I see all the time." And that's the hard part about this is like as you're creating in a sense a little bit of a new life and a new identity around whatever pieces of homesteading you want to embrace, you have to be able to kind of like be open to making new connections because like you're saying, people who are either going to be enthusiastic and go with you or they're going to be like, "Oh, well the traffic was pretty bad." Like it's kind of like the whole mango tree thing was lost on that person, right? But
That's right.
it's okay, right? Like, I mean, this is kind of how we are in the world. Like, we repel the people that are not going to jibe, and we attract the ones that are. So,
Hmm.
and I think it does take a little courage, but I think just the more you go into these areas that you're interested in, you have to trust that it will open up these avenues for you to find your people, right?
Absolutely. And you can also look at it like gardening. You need to plant the seeds.
Yes.
So every Christmas day, I knock on the door of 10 of my neighbors and give them a Christmas gift. And it's
Oh,
tiny. And my
yeah,
husband's like, "Do we have to do this? This is so weird." And I'm like, "Do you want us to know who our neighbors are?" And he's like, "Yeah, I kind of do." And so we go in our slippers and our reindeer. This year it was reindeer antlers. But,
yeah,
we show up. And because we show up, our neighbors know who we are. It takes a village to have a healthy life. And so
yeah,
all of these folks are not homesteaders, but they know my name and
yeah,
we wave to each other and we're not just going into because I think that with the advent of garages and
yeah,
commutes, we've just gotten so far away from being connected as people. And that is a
yes,
version of homesteading. You know
yes,
why? Because if there's something scary that happens, my neighbor will call me and tell me if
yeah,
I'm not home because they know me because I knocked on
right.
their door on Christmas Day and gave them, whatever I made and fermented. I think usually it's fermented honey ginger because who doesn't like fermented honey ginger? So it takes an effort, but it's worth that effort. It's kind of like, six pack abs. If you want a six pack six-pack community, you need to do a little work, and it's rewarding. Now, I will say as an introvert, just really quickly, there are
Yeah.
ways that you can, I'm super introverted. I'm not timid, I'm introverted, and I'm
Yeah.
not shy, but I need a lot of downtime. And so what I do is if I'm going somewhere that's new, I will set the alarm for 20 minutes and I will take a bathroom break in 20 minutes and I'll just
Yeah.
reset my nervous system and then go back. And so there are ways that you can do this even as an introverted person.
Oh, I love that. And that's such a great way to think about this because and I think I'm probably more wired that way too, honestly, because I know I can get kind of to my limit if I have too much because, I deal with a lot of people. I love that in my job,
Yeah.
but sometimes at the end of the day, I'm like, whoa, I just need to go into a quiet room and read a book now. Like that's my way to recharge, right? And it's good to acknowledge that, but I think that can be a skill too to like really
Yes.
tune into, all right, what's the balance here? But one other thing I just wanted to mention, because I think we've sort of like skirted around this, but I think this is just really key to kind of touch on this directly is for me personally, when I think about like what you've described homesteading as, I know this is taking it even a more maybe like intense direction, but when we go back to what happened in like 2020, 2021, and
Yes.
sometimes my brain thinks like if we were to go there again, or God forbid, we don't know the trajectory of the future, you don't know the people around you, you can't depend on them. Like, I mean, not to say we have to all learn how to like what's the word for it? Like, prep or whatnot, right, Elizabeth? Or like, live off the grid. But I mean, to be able to, worst case scenario, have things you could barter other people with or help
Yes.
each other out, right? Like, whether it's through services or goods that you can produce. I mean, there is real value in that. And if you go back, hundreds of years, that was literally kind of the backbone of society. That was how people cooperated to like make these communities run. And so I think even if you put, like you said, just a little iota of effort into some facet of being a little bit more connected, even if it's just starting with the people you already know and nurturing those relationships a little bit and doing, a little bit more invitation, like, hey, why don't you come over and we like sample some new foods I made or whatever it is, whatever floats their boat, like that will start to over time pay back dividends. And I think it's that reciprocity of human relationships that
Yes.
is going to be key to the future, right? And we've really kind of gotten away from that with social media and smartphones. And I think just one of the we don't really talk about mental health, but I just want to say this right here and now. Like one of the biggest drivers of mental health issues is just the isolation factor and how disconnected people are, right, in today's world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. One of the ways that prisoners are punished is to be put in isolation. It's one of the worst things that can be done to a human being. And
Yeah.
yet we're putting ourselves in those prisons of isolation by spending too much time in the screen and thinking we'll get around to connecting. And when we talk about the pandemic, which was really terrifying, I couldn't find produce at my school, at
I
my
know.
job, at my grocery store. Like that was very scary for me. Um,
Yeah.
and is there going to be another pandemic? I don't know, but could there be a hurricane in your neighborhood? I have
Right.
earthquakes here. Like those are things that happen that you will want to know who your neighbors are and you will want to be able to relate and know, oh, well, this person has, extra water stored up or whatever.
Yeah.
That the way that you do that is by getting to know them now before there
Right.
is an emergency. And it's just smart thinking. It's just smart plan. It's adulting. That's what we get
Yeah.
to do. We get to adult
Yeah.
by, and then also get some endorphin release, right? Because,
Yeah.
and your oxytocin, I mean, hugs are just incredible medicine. And so, yes, that's one aspect of homesteading that really works with mental wellness.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, I am actually super curious now to read your book because I had no idea how many different facets homesteading covered. And I just think whether people want to go into it full on or just dabble in it, like there's got to be a wealth of information and just ideas generated, right? Where it's like, oh God, I could see myself maybe getting into gardening or the fermentation or maybe teas or whatever it is, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't see how you couldn't get some type of like skill or just information to help forward your health in some way, shape, or form, even if it's just relationship building ideas, right, with your neighbors. So that's
That's
awesome.
exactly right. And I do have a little gift for your listeners.
Oh, awesome.
There's a homesteader habit tracker. So if you would like to learn how to make tiny little habits that will create incredible change, you can go to my website and get your gift. It's at createwellnessproject.com/gift.
I'll link that in the show notes
Oh,
too, so
thank
that
you.
all they have to do is go beneath and click the link. That's
Yay.
awesome. No, those are great resources because I mean, as we're talking about the negative parts of phones, like who doesn't have their phone near them all the time?
That's right. That's
Yeah, I mean,
exactly right.
I'm a habit tracker, like, I'm not gonna lie, I use some apps on there for breathing meditation, like, I'm totally like,
Nice.
"Ah." But no, that's awesome, Elizabeth. Is there anything else that you wanna mention just before we wrap up today?
Just one thing,
Yeah,
self-care can make the world a better place.
yeah,
And when I talk about self-care, I mean looking for moments of frivolous joy. Find your frivolous joy. It will change your world and then it will ripple out into the rest of the world. This was such
I
an honor to be with you today, Courtney. I really
yeah.
enjoyed our time together.
Yeah, I did too. This is such a great conversation, and it's so fun just to see what comes up and kind of follow that
Mhm.
trail. And I think there's so many great takeaways. Like I even am thinking like, God, I should get some kefir grains again. Like I have not done that, in a minute. So, which gets me back to like, I need to go get a copy of your book so I can read it and get inspired to do some of this stuff. I'm pretty good. I forgot to tell you. I'll just tell you this real quick.
Yeah.
I made my own using Sally Fallon's Nourishing Traditions. I made my own. Um, Baby formula, I guess.
Ooh.
Yes, using raw milk and all of the different ingredients because my 2 youngest, I nursed them until I couldn't for whatever unfortunate reason, my supply dried up, like, when
Mm.
they were probably around, like, 7, 8 months, somewhere in there, and I wasn't ready to just I never wanted to use baby formula because it's pure toxic evil, and so
Yeah.
I, like you, found a raw milk farmer. I ended up getting in my car and driving a full on 45 minutes once a week to go pick this stuff up because it's not easy to get unless you
Wow.
have a cow or somebody with a
Hmm.
cow that you know. And I would, with my blender, it was a project. I mean, I would make like a massive amount and then put it in breast milk bags and store it. Like, that's a story for another day. But just to tell you, I guess I did homestead a little bit even
Yes, you
more
did.
intensely. I did. And I didn't even know I was
Absolutely
doing it.
did. That's the thing. People are homesteaders and they don't even realize it. But that's phenomenal. And for those that are thinking like, gosh, I'd like to do that, but I don't have money for raw milk, you can go to a farmer and volunteer. The time that I
Yes.
milked a cow was you could be a part of, you could go to the farmer, help milk, clean up the cow poo, which is huge. It's like the
Me
biggest,
too.
I've never seen so much poo come out of an animal before. Again, poo, drink your kombucha. I just said poo again. But so, like, if people are thinking, oh, I could never do that, you can. You absolutely can. And even in an urban area, you might be able to find a farmer just in the outskirts that needs some help and will give you free raw milk.
Yeah, and I actually, now that you say that, so I live in the state of Wisconsin, so plenty of farms around, and there are farmers willing to give it, if you will, but they don't the legal workaround is they don't wanna sell it, so they don't
Yeah.
get in trouble, right? So
Yeah.
this is the way they do it. It's like you kind of join as a almost like a co-op member, and you work for the ability to actually get the milk, which kind of
Nice.
is nice because, again, if it's pricey or it's just easier to put the labor hours in and then you get the product you want, like, that's awesome, right? It's great to have that kind of bartering system. So I'm so glad you brought
Yeah.
that up because, like, I didn't even think about that until like you said. I'm like, oh yeah, there are certain farmers that won't actually sell it because of the whole legality piece of it. So
Well, I'm really impressed that you made your own baby formula. Like that is inspiring and it's inspiring others that they can do that for their children.
yeah, I don't think I've ever mentioned that. And what's more amazing is my kids actually drank it. So it must have been pretty okay because they
Raw
drank
milk is yummy, man. Raw
it.
milk is delish.
And I used the cream in my coffee. I can't say
Ah,
it went well because it wasn't fermented, but it tasted amazing. I was not
right?
gonna toss that. I was like, "No, I'll take the cream for my coffee. That's great, thank you." Oh my gosh. Well, this was so fun. I so appreciate you coming on today, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Courtney. This has been enlightening, and now I'm inspired to do some more spokes of the homesteading wheel. Thank you so much for having this podcast, for having a podcast about poop. Makes me so happy. You have no idea.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that.
Did you find this episode informative and helpful? I'd love to have you leave me a 5-star rating. Do you have questions about holistic approaches to optimizing gut health that you'd like to ask? Please leave your question or comment below, and I will be sure to address it personally or cover it in a future episode. Be sure to check the show notes for any resources mentioned in today's episode. See you next time.